everybody, and welcome to JTV. So today we are joined from across the pond by Allison Josephs, also known as Jew in the City. Now, Allison is someone who grew up as a proud Jew, but really in terms of her observance of Jewish practice and Jewish rituals, it's something she grew in throughout her years, and ended up setting up a really amazing online presence called Jew in the City, which I saw from, I think over a decade ago. I remember starting to see some of the content coming out that was trying to, I think, explain Judaism and the spiritual components of Judaism, and perhaps debunking some of the myths people may have had about Judaism, and specifically Orthodox Judaism, in a really refreshing and positive and engaging way. And what I think is really brilliant about what Allison does and how she's grown this entity called Jew in the City, and you should definitely check out the website, is that they have now various arms to what the organization does, including, as well as trying to promote observance in Judaism and to sort of demystify it, she's also doing something which some people who are trying to promote Judaism don't do, which is she's trying to deal with some of the issues that exist within the religious observant Orthodox world, and isn't trying to act as if everything within the religious observant world is perfect and great, and she acknowledges some of the issues, and she's actively trying to deal with them and heal them, and makes great distinctions between Torah and Judaism, and then the social norms that exist in the frum world today, which don't necessarily reflect Torah, or may perhaps require some fine-tuning. And so, Allison, it's really a great honor to have you here today. I know we met briefly once a few years ago in New York at an awards dinner, and really grateful to have you on here. So I want to talk about the two different elements to what you do, both the presenting Judaism and connecting people to Judaism, but also dealing with some of the issues that exist within the Jewish world. But can we just start off by learning about who you are? What's your story? What's your background, and what were the steps that led you to setting up this thing called Jew in the City?
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me on. I grew up about 45 minutes outside of Manhattan as a proud conservative Jew, which is a little different how you guys have things over there in the UK. What it meant to be a conservative Jew in the late 80s, early 90s when I was growing up in New Jersey was Orthodox was too Jewish and Reform wasn't Jewish enough. So we were kind of perfectly placed in the middle. I think a lot of Jews sort of consider themselves to be the perfect balance of not too much and not too little. But practically speaking, we didn't keep kosher. We would do an occasional Shabbat dinner if it fit in, and if it didn't, it didn't. If, Sukkot could fit into our schedule that year, maybe we did some observance. If we had a dance recital, we didn't. And not only was I raised to be a proud Jew who was supposed to marry someone Jewish and, was proud of Israel and into Holocaust education, I was also raised to really look down on the Orthodox community. My father treated Hasidic Jews when he was training to be a doctor, doing his residency in Manhattan. Some of my earliest memories were him coming home from work and telling us they're dirty, they're smelly, they're ignorant, they can't speak English. So while I had this very proud sense of being a Jew, I also had this sense that there are these people within our community that are too much, too extreme, too embarrassing. And I kind of wish they would, kind of modernize and be more normal like the rest of us Jews. I probably would have stayed on this same path of, marrying someone Jewish, having 2 to 3 kids, just kind of doing what my parents raised me to do, if I hadn't been sort of thrown off course with a traumatic experience when I was 8. I walked into my homeroom in 4th grade on a cold December morning, and my classmates were crying, and I found out that a girl in the grade above me had been murdered by her father. He had gone crazy, and the night before he had killed both of his kids and himself. And so suddenly this upper middle class, privilege loving, kind of idyllic childhood was shattered by this very traumatic experience. And being confronted with death at not even 9 years old got me to start wondering what will happen when I die? What will I take with me? What are we even doing here in the first place? And as the child of successful parents, I turned the question on them a couple days after the funeral, why are we here? And they just stared back at me, just like dumbfounded with no answer. And that was a really upsetting realization to make, that the people I was relying on for important information had no wisdom to give me. So this led me to about 7 years of kind of existential crisis, often on panic attacks, minor insomnia. As long as I was distracted, I was fine. I was the life of the party. I was a straight A student. When I would stop being distracted, I would remember the fact that nothing that I was doing was adding up to anything, and I would be 6 feet under one day. So that was sort of how my journey to observance got at least sparked. I met an Orthodox teacher in high school. My parents didn't care for us to learn about Judaism particularly, but we had to marry a nice Jewish boy because of Hitler and the pogroms. And if my mother was on a roll, she would invoke the Spanish Inquisition. So they sent my sisters and me to an after-school Hebrew high after our bat mitzvahs so that we can meet a nice Jewish boy to eat bacon cheeseburgers with. So in this Hebrew high, they had some Orthodox teachers. And I started to meet Orthodox Jews up close. And while I was expecting to see, women subjugating, rock throwing extremists, what I saw instead were some really nice, reasonable people living lives not too much worse off than mine, and then also filled with a meaning and a purpose that I was missing. So that was sort of what took the question to then the next level of, maybe the answer could be within Judaism. And then how that then got to Jew in the City. So I made my own journey from discovering this information. My family and friends thought that I had gone off the deep end and were trying to save me. My father especially, he thought I was becoming one of these extremists that he was treating at the hospital. And at all of 16, I challenged him and I said, if you think I'm joining a cult, then please save me from this cult and your unborn grandchildren. But you'll have to learn something if you want to have a proper debate, because how do you debate from a position of ignorance? So if you would like to try to convince me not to do this, then learn what I learned, meet who I meet, come for Shabbat where I do, and then I'll see if what you say makes any sense. He was almost 50 years old, and he began to study to spite me, so Jewish. And after about a year of study, he came up to me one day and he said, I was wrong, you were right, and it's time to play catch up. So he, my mother, both of my sisters all became observant, and all made Aliyah actually. So the first thing I saw is that getting accurate information in front of Jews is really important if they're going to make decisions about their Jewish future. And so that sort of pulled me into the world of Jewish outreach and education. I felt like we had the worst branding about just sort of Judaism in general. And I worked for some typical outreach organizations. I worked specifically with a lot of alumni from Birthright. I spoke to about 3,000 Birthright alumni after I graduated from college and my first job at Partners in Torah. And what I saw over and over again were these same myths and misconceptions about religious Jews. Like a woman would tell me, Birthright, what is amazing, I'd want to become more observant, but I want to have a career, and religious Jewish women can't work. I said, what mitzvah is that? I'd speak to a guy who was so inspired, he wants to grow, but when he was in an Orthodox neighborhood, they threw garbage on his group. And I had to explain, not everybody that dresses religious acts religious. And so I was confronted with people who were interested in connecting more deeply to their Judaism, but had all these wrong ideas about what that actually looks like. But sort of the turning point was an interview by a Spanish journalist in 2005, right after my second daughter was born. She posted on Craigslist that she was seeing all these Orthodox women around. She hadn't seen any in Spain because, well, the Inquisition. And she wanted to know if an Orthodox woman would sit down and explain her life to the reporter. I answered the response. She came over the next day, and I could see as she met me and heard my story and my life, everything that she expected an Orthodox woman to be: meek, frumpy, dirty, ignorant, closed-minded. I was the exact opposite. And so many Orthodox Jews I knew were the exact opposite. And at that point, I said to my husband, we're doing the worst job at telling our story. Our PR is awful. What if we could just put out a different side to who we are? And as I was trying to figure out what vehicle to tell that different side with, this thing called YouTube got born. And suddenly I found the vehicle to begin telling that story.
Amazing. And tell us a bit about sort of how that got off the ground and what you sort of did initially through Jew in the City. Because I remember some of these videos showing up. I remember you got, had some celebrities involved like Mayim Bialik and stuff like that. Tell us a bit about what you started to do on YouTube.
Yeah. So, social media hadn't even been invented at that point. There was this place where you could broadcast yourself. And, the thing that I'll reveal to the audience today is that while I was having these very like deep and dark existential like worries in my childhood, I was also having very shallow ideas, which is like, I should be on a screen somewhere. My name should be in lights. I had this pull towards fame, which I think is not uncommon for the secular world. And I think it may even be connected to that sort of darker existential side of how do I not disappear? How do I somehow preserve myself? Now, the truth is that it's not a very nice quality to run towards the spotlight. Certainly, if you're an observant Jew, there's an idea of modesty, of sort of doing acts quietly. And I really took that to heart. And I sort of put that side of myself away for years because I do believe actually, acts that are done in privacy and quietly are the greatest ones that we can do. At the same time, there's an idea of serving God with both of your hearts. B'kol levavcha, in the Shema that we say that we serve Hashem b'kol levavcha. Why are there two vets in the word lave, with our evil inclination and our good inclination? And so I saw that I do have a side of myself that is pulled towards this stuff and does have a presence to be able to explain our traditions and our community in a way that's effective, that reaches people. And so I saw that I could take that part of myself and put it out there to the world in a way to serve the community. And so there was a show that was one of the first scripted YouTube shows called Lonely Girl 15. She made it to the front of the Wall Street Journal. Millions of people were tuning in. And I thought, okay, she's a lonely girl who's 15. What am I? I'm Jewish. I live in this city. And that was how the name Jew in the City was created. And essentially what happened was as more social media platforms got invented, we started to hop onto more social media platforms. I made a couple of videos just sort of on the side while I was supporting my husband as he was finishing up law school, and they started to pick up some steam. I mean, the space was very not crowded back in those days. Now everybody is a content creator. Everybody is, speaking into, the internet. But back in those days, it was a much less crowded space. I'm talking like 2005, 2006. And I said to my husband one day, who people told me, if you marry an Orthodox man, he'll subjugate you. I said, I have no seed money. I have no business plan. I'm not even sure what I'm building because social media hadn't been invented yet. And I was building a social media organization. I said, but I think if I give this some real attention, I could do something to change the Jewish world. Do you mind if we live off of credit cards and take out more student loans while I quit my job and try to pursue this? And he told me to follow my dreams. So that was essentially how Jew in the City got started. I have to give him credit for that. Took on an intern from Barnard, who kind of was my first, sidekick, and sort of kept talking about the issues more and more. And I can tell you, when we launched in 2007, a lot of people really did not get it. A lot of people thought that it was pointless. They did not know why we used the word Orthodox. I had people in the Jewish outreach world tell me, please don't use that word. And I said, but it's only used for the bad. We have to use it for the good if we're going to change the meaning. I had people that told me, don't bother. You're never going to change anything. And I can tell you, this past March, we just launched a bureau in Hollywood to change the perceptions within the Hollywood community. We've met with major networks and, so far. And so it's a nice feeling to see after many years of hard work that this is actually starting to come together. And yes, as you mentioned, Maya Bialik is a partner in Torah and a good friend of mine. So she's appeared in several of our videos. We've done these Orthodox Jewish All-Star videos, which I would say is another piece of content that really took our work to the next level. So we've had Senator Joe Lieberman in our video. We've had Faye Kellerman, people like, the treasurer of Ford Motor Company, who's an Orthodox Jew, the general counsel of Madison Square Garden, who's an Orthodox Jew, Olympians who are Orthodox Jews. Essentially, the All-Stars highlight people in the tops of their professional fields who are also Orthodox Jews, to show that not only is there room within Jewish law to pursue your dreams, but that success, when it comes with faith and when it comes with the grounding of, a religious Jewish life, it adds to the meaning, to show how many organizations, top organizations and companies, are willing to work with a Jewish lifestyle. And so that's been another way to, get our work out to another group of people.
Really incredible stuff. And I remember even seeing it from stuff you put out 10 years ago. It was really highly produced and you had cool special effects and all the rest of it.